Good evening. You are tuned to the 250th broadcast of Noise Party. This special broadcast was recorded in part live at AS220 in Providence, Rhode Island. And it is a presentation of the Cabaret of the Oddly Normal, featuring Srini, Catfish Hunter, and Princess Pearl. The second half of our broadcast is The Wrong Hero presents The Unmaking of Sgt. Pepper. My name is Francis DiMenno. I'm the producer of this show. I'd like you to know that in the months of January and February, we will be presenting broadcasts live from the Liberty Cafe in Central Square, Cambridge.
Okay. Since you can't pick your family, it's their fault.
Actually, all right. I can see you in like a dollar Friday. My place is
We good to go? Thank you for coming. Thank you to Scott who got me a chance to play here. Of course, what I guess to tell you that just do like improv kind of music. Thank you. coming there.
Exchanges between her and I, because she really has no idea what I'm talking about.
How can you say that?
No, I don't mean it like that. I mean, when I tell her, you know, I felt like what you said to me was like this. She disagrees and says no. And what I need is it on tape so she can see it. You getting this right now?
No.
Yeah. It's after 7 years. 7 years. Almost 8 years. She doesn't quite understand what I'm trying to tell her.
What's that?
Well, he knew how to be clear and communicate well. Maybe I would understand what he was saying.
One of the things is she interrupts me when I'm trying to formulate a thought. That's the first thing. That's number
I'll
one.
never do that, Manny.
That's number one of the things that irk the shit out of me. They irks me and makes me mad.
Well, it's better than having her tell you to shut up. That's what my girlfriend does. I was telling her that Sir Walter Raleigh thing. She said, oh, that's very nice.
See what I mean?
Yeah. And I was reading her a list of the things that Walt Whitman said about the Democratic National Convention. You know, that it was full of miles of cutthroats and cheats and creatures of the president, creatures of the president. This long list, which is hilarious. And she said, shut up.
That's very nice.
I know.
You should see it. Damn shot. You saw it for the first time.
How much does it
Become a member of the version of theater for $10 and every show is half the price. If you end up in sign-ups, it's like $72. But it's really ridiculous. I tried to talk Mark into making it more. Right, you get a shirt for free. You still see it. I think we have 100 members yet. He actually was. But I don't know where we are on the list. Rick? Maybe Rick. Yeah, the free ones are Arizona Bar, I think. It's quite a deal.
Oh, well, there's about 30 or so there. And I'll make sure the next time I see
This one's called Doubting. Talk Jesus, and it's available to you in vinyl format. I know, it's very exciting.
Smoke it!
This is our last song. Here it is.
Catfish Hunter.
I don't know where Scott is, though. I figured by now we would have heard that.
Is there going to be a cabaret in December?
No. Thank you for that pointed question. No, there is no cabaret in December. But what there is in December is a fabulous burlesque show.
All month.
That'll be the whole month?
Friday and Saturday for the whole month of December.
Friday and Saturday, the whole month of December.
And when will the cabaret return?
In January, the first Saturday in January?
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you, madam, for your pointed questions.
Girl,
Yes.
become a member of AS220.
Oh, yeah.
How do you become a member of AS220? Well, they like it no matter what you do. Just do something to help out, whether it be stapling a pamphlet, or working a door, or cleaning a roof.
Are there membership papers at the door?
Yes, there are membership papers at the door.
Or can they ask
Or they could definitely talk to Bert. Bert, will you raise your hand, please?
Bert?
Oh, he's way in the back. Way in the back.
Wait.
Okay. Does anybody else want to help out their princess with announcements? Was there anything else I was supposed to tell you about? Yes? Huh?
The
The band? The band? Fabulous! Thank you, Steve keyboards. Thank you, Pete, for joining us tonight. Thank you, Stella on drums. Thank you very much. And thank you for coming. February. It's gonna be a while. Thank you for being with us here tonight. It really has been a blast. So till next time you meet again with us. Next time you come, please bring a friend and come through. Thank you very much, Joe, and our sound and light. Thank you, AS220. Thank you, Scott. Oh, yes, oh my God, Steve, before you go. Steve, before you go. Steve! We have a special request, and now that the show is over, let's get a little familiar with the audience. Do you know that song? What's it called? Happy Birthday? And we'll all sing it, and it's Happy Birthday to Scott. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Scott. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. This is just like one big happy family.
You're our mother.
We have some announcements. Next month, featuring the entire month of December on Friday and Saturdays.
The following is a Wrong Hero presentation of the Unmaking of Sergeant Pepper. Kindly ignore that screen. Everything here is happening backwards. Kind of. Which is to say, this is more about the Unmaking. Hi, I'm George Martin, and you know, I was really the fifth Beatle, but nobody gives me any credit for it, so I don't really care. Hi, we're dressed in weird hippie costumes. Look, a top hat. I must be an Edwardian. Look at that drab Britain and those colorful clothing that somehow make up for it. Wow, look at this. We're dancing. Boy, we having fun. Look at all that fancy makeup and those weird costumes. Hey, we're hippies. Hi, I'm Beatle. I'm Beatle Ringo. I didn't have much talent, but I sort of went along for the ride. Look, we're dancing. Oh boy, I'm a reporter. I actually get to talk to the great John Lennon. Wow, I hope he doesn't like really put me down. Hi, it's us. We got our medals, but we're going to send them all back, or at least John will. Hi, I'm Paul. I'm the talented one. I was the one with the real genius. John, he spent all his time just farting around. Wow, look at us. We're the Beatles. We're famous. Look how great we are. Look at all those people screaming so loud that they can't even hear our music. Isn't that wonderful? And here's the circus where we got our inspiration. And here's the weird Indian guy that sort of screwed us around, and then we came out with the White Album, which really kind of sucked when you think about it. Hi, I'm George. Although I wrote a lot of great songs which later appeared on All Things Must Pass, they didn't let me put them on Sgt. Pepper. In fact, my song Not Guilty never made the cut. Wow, look at this, a riot. all for us, the Beatles. Aren't we great? Look where we get our inspiration, from Andy Warhol-like products. And here's some of the alternate takes of the album cover that were never used. And look, here we go. We're getting off the plane now. Of course, I think right now, this is Manila, and of course they hounded us out of there, so we decided not to tour anymore. And could you blame us? I mean, we're the real greatest Beatles people here, and so we don't really need to tour anymore, do we? And look, we're holding an album by Wilson Pickett or somebody, I can't tell. Gee, look, we're riding in a limousine. Look at all those police. They're not here to arrest us, they're here to protect us. How do you like that, huh? That's quite a switch for poor lads from Liverpool. Well, you know, I said we were more popular than Christ. I meant to say we were more popular than God, but somehow that didn't make it through the final edit. Yeah, Jesus died for John Lennon, sure he did. Well, John Lennon sort of died for Jesus too, didn't he? Wow, look at that, they're burning our records. You know, we impregnated the sleeves with pot, so all those people were going to get high. Wow. We had to have all these guards and stuff, and you know, state-of-the-art security. And we had these really weird old microphones when we recorded Sgt. Pepper, and these old-fashioned machines. We didn't even have we had a lousy, you know, two-track. Only one song even used four-track technology, and we had to sort of stitch together two tracks to do it, and it was ridiculous. And yet, look at what we did. Hi, I'm still around. I'm writing mediocre pop songs now. I mean, but that's okay, because after all, what can you do after you've been in the Beatles for as many years as me, right? I mean, nothing really, right? And what happened was, you know, when we did A Day in the Life, all the trumpet players were drunk. Hi, I'm Ringo. You know, I actually did some pretty good drumming for this band, but nobody really gives me any credit. They just assume that I'm some sort of guy who would have been a hairdresser if he didn't get very lucky at a very crucial moment. And, you know, that's still kind of galling to me, actually. And I don't really like being thought of as merely the Beatles drummer, although when you think about it, the only reason I'm famous is because I was in the Beatles, right? I mean, nothing I did after that was any good. Yes, it's wonderful, simply wonderful. Of course, you know, I had so much to do with the making or unmaking of Sgt. Pepper that, of course, I'm going to sit here. Hi, I'm George. I'm posing with a sitar off to the corner, which is to signify my interest in Indian music. You know, if it weren't for me, George Harrison, there wouldn't be Indian restaurants. And we would never have, and there wouldn't be any transcendental meditation either, for that matter. And I wouldn't have come out with that big 3-album set, which nobody buys anymore, and which you can buy in the cutout bins for 25 cents. Hi, I'm George Martin. I'm more important than George Harrison, really. That's why I get the most space in this documentary. Because, well, yes, John was in this movie, and he was just sort of farting around. The only reason he got the part was because he was in the Beatles. And George, well, he was off eating in Indian restaurants and getting dyspepsia. Hi, I'm Ringo, and I wear these dark sunglasses for no discernible reason. And, well, for a guy who's used to eating sausages and drinking beer, this whole hippie thing was pretty heavy duty, because I was just an ordinary guy. I didn't really have that much interest in anything else that the boys were doing. Hi, I'm Paul, and my wife has a line of vegetarian food. Well, you know, it was Ringo, me. That's right, Ringo. I provided the rhythmic backdrop, and otherwise Sgt. Pepper would have been just like a bunch of weird tracks, experimental stuff like John Lennon came out with. And, well, it was 1966, and the Beatles were just so incredibly famous, they even had Japanese fans. And it's funny, but the people who didn't think they could get Paul or John, they all went for George. And here we are at Abbey Road Studios. We never bothered to decorate it or even air condition it very much, and you know, it smelled, and the boys didn't like working there because they were big stars. And I can't say rightfully that I blame them. I was in charge of things, and I could have spruced it up a bit, but I really didn't bother. You know, John came in with this song, and it was really great. It was called Strawberry Something or Other, and I really wish he hadn't added all that crappy stuff on it, but he insisted. And so, you know, I just went to the control console and fiddled and diddled for a while, and there you go. I managed to get 2 songs and splice them together, and that was really great. because everybody couldn't even imagine what the song sounded like before I got to it, but actually it was a nice little acoustic ditty when he first came out with it, and gee, I sort of wish he had left it that way. Actually, there's an album called Beatles Rarities where you can hear the original crummy version of the song before I got my hands on it, and well, that's all I have to say about that. It was a really great song. It's just a pity that they didn't follow through with their original intention of making an album about their great childhood, like Strawberry Fields and Penny Lane was supposed to be the first two tracks, but then the record company said, oh, no, you got to have a song out. And so, in fact, we did in fact release those before the album, and really they belonged on the album, but back then, of course, with the primitive technology we had, albums had to be about 45 minutes long. So, anyway, John wanted to do something typically Lennon-esque, which is to have a song in 2 different keys, and well, you know, I fiddled around with the control console, and I got those sinister tape heads rolling, and before you know it, the VU meter was peaking into the red zone, but I didn't really care because, after all, my name was going to be on the record, but no one was going to think that I had anything to do with this because pop fans are incredibly ignorant, as we all know, and I'm a classical buff myself. Every once and then, now and again, I'll listen to some jazz, but really, classical music is my forte, and so I managed to throw a bunch of classical influences onto the album for the boys, and well, I wanted to have a bit more influence with them than I actually had at the time. Now, you know, I'd already played piano on some of their songs, and you know, I did the sort of stuff that a real musician does for them, and well, nobody really gave me any credit for it, but you can't really blame them after all. I mean, again, what they really wanted to make, you know, was an opera, but they never listened to operas, and you know, this is 1967, and everybody was saying, kill the pigs, and then the boys come up with the idea of an opera, and you know, Hitler was supposed to be on the cover of Sgt. Pepper, which would have been great because, well, as you know, or may know, John Lennon once said that the Beatles were like Hitler and that you don't get that way without stepping on everybody in town. So, anyway, now, here's an interesting question. Was the crescendo at the end of A Day in the Life actually supposed to represent the atomic bomb? Well, it's difficult to say. Even though I was there at the studio and sort of cheering the musicians on to you know, get up at the end of those 15 bars and get to their highest note, even though Paul claims he's the one that he suggested all this, so of course it was me, you know, because I was the guy at the console here. I mean, as you can see, I'm shown prominently fiddling with the Beatles' raw footage there and making it into something marketable. No, really, George doesn't really have it right at all. To tell you the truth, it was my idea to have that thing at the end of A Day in the Life, and I even had cameras there, and I could show you the footage, although we're not going to bother to, and I could prove it, but, you know, well, you know, I'm not going to, well, when we first got together, we were like, you know, we were awash in a sea of beer and amphetamines, and we did several gigs a night, and every night for a couple of years, and until George was deported for being underage, that is, and well, at first John controlled the group, and most of the singles that he came out with in the first few years of our recording career were in fact John's. But yes, that's right, John was the guy. John controlled the group. It's too bad he's not around today to defend himself. But then again, given what he was doing in 1980, well, given what he was doing in 1980, John probably would just be sitting there with a drool cup nodding his head every now and then. I'm the only one that's coherent and lucid, and that's because of my wife's vegetarian food. Even though it's very high in fat, and we've had to pull some of it off of the market because it misrepresented itself, I must say in defense of my wife, she played a pretty mean tambourine on all those Wings albums that we put out, and well, she looked pretty in back of a piano, even though the piano wasn't mic'd or connected to the soundboard in any way. And look, we got classical musicians, That must mean we're really classy now, huh? Well, you know, that was actually me. I was actually able to play that because I'm a classically trained musician.
My name is David Mason. And, well, you know, Paul, he sort of suggested what I should do, but I'm the one who actually wrote the notes. So there's a pretty valid case to be made that I was actually one of the composers of Penny Lane. When you come right down to it, yes, we're still on those first two songs, Penny Lane and Strawberry Fields. We haven't even gotten to talking about Sgt. Pepper yet. Look at me, I'm playing the horn. I can still play the same notes, note perfect, even 25 years later. Look, and I'm posing in front of the music that I put together for this song of his, which he says is his, but since I wrote the most important part, obviously it's a joint collaboration between himself and me. Now, the reason that Strawberry Lanes and Penny Fields didn't get in that album, I don't know, the industry weasels, yeah, it was their fault. They did it. I had nothing to do with it. I wanted it to be on the record. Honest, I did. And, well, it's too bad. We really should have put it on the record. It belonged on there. And guess what? This guy, it's this guy's fault. He's the guy. That's why it didn't go to #1. We went through all that trouble to yank the single out of the context of the album that it was supposed to serve as the centerpiece for, just so we could make some extra money and satisfy the record company. And then this guy manages to keep it out of the #1 slot. Now, how do you like that, huh? You know, if we really wanted to redress this great injustice, we reissue Sgt. Pepper with the 2 tracks that are missing, and maybe also throw on one of the best takes of Not Guilty, the George Harrison outtake, to boot, just for an added treat. I bet you that's still sitting in the can. Did you know we did 103 takes for that? Isn't that incredible? 103 takes, and it still wasn't worth putting out. Well, you know, if I'd had my way, I would have just done it as an acoustic number like I did on my 1979 self-titled solo album, George Harrison. However, Paul was running things. Yes, I was running things. Note my extravagant hand gestures. That's because of the time I spent in Italy. I sort of picked things up from the natives there. And anyway, John, George, Ringo, forget them. I'm the guy that really put Sgt. Pepper together. Like I was saying, it was always John, John, John. That's right, it was John. He was my pal. We even co-wrote songs together, although I was never credited. It was always McCartney and Lennon for the first, 10 singles or so, and then it became Lennon McCartney, and I had a lot to do with that, of course. And what about me, huh? I always get stuck off into. You know, EMI had an 8-track and they never used it. How do you like that? Well, we were just going to make another Beatles album, and then we decided, hey, I know, we'll pretend like it's art, and all the suckers will eat it up. Yeah, so that's what we did. We got together, and you know, we took a little vacation. When we came back, we had all these great ideas, like putting Mick Jagger's head made out of bronze. Like we wanted to have Hitler on it, but we couldn't get the rights. You know, the Hitler estate, they were very reluctant to release those rights. Now, everything about Sgt. Pepper was like magical because we said it was, not because there was any actual magic going on there. So anyway, it was sort of the equivalent of New Age music, but of course this was 1967, and in spite of the fact that we were trendsetters, we never really. Okay, Paul, enough already. Well, anyway, here I am at the console with that reel-to-reel tape, showing how technical I am. See, look at me. Isn't this great? We plugged it right into the direct box, this guitar, you know, and it was really, it was sensational. Just wait till you hear it. Of course you can't hear it because, well, we decided not to play this part. So, I'm so very sorry, boss. You can't actually hear any of this music because it's copyrighted. In fact, this whole enterprise is kind of dubious because the footage is also copyrighted. But since showing it negative constitutes fiddling with it to the degree that I can acceptably make it a non-copyrighted work of art copyrighted to the wrong hero, I can get away with it. But sorry, we can't have any of the music. It's a shame, but you know this music by now. Just think of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, the opening part, right? And here are the Beatles singing en chorale without any augmented instrumentation. I'm sure you've seen this documentary. Well, if not, you'll probably see it again and again and again. You know, the Beatles, they're really big now. How do you like that? You know, they were first together in like 1959, 1960, and here it is, 35 years, 36 years later, and they're still the toppermost of the poppermost, in the eloquent words of John Lennon. Well, here we are at the drab, dreary Abbey Road Studios. We got some tinted film here to make it look a little more Victorian than it actually is, which isn't a very difficult trick. And here we have some fascinating footage of the roof of the Abbey Road Studios, and some council tenements, and why this must be, gee, Liverpool. Huh. Oh, that's pretty appropriate. How do you like that? Liverpool. Hi, we're Liverpool. We're Liverpool. Hi, I'm holding a white guitar. I'm holding a white guitar. Look at me. I'm dressed up like a priest, a Spanish priest at that. And now look, here I am in my psychedelic clown suit, along with my pal Ringo, who's wearing a luau. Here I am endorsing Miller beer. I must be in America in that shot. There's George, looking typically morbid. You know, the guy has no sense of humor. That's why he put out all those films like Brazil. He wanted to prove to the world that, although he had no sense of humor, he had nothing against humor per se. Here I am with my Elvis Presley mutton chops or sideburns. You know, John was really kind of off his rocker when we did Sgt. Pepper. It was mostly Paul's work, I hate to admit it. Oh, and mine as well, of course. Now, the thing about Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, now, John, again and again, John says, oh no, it has nothing to do with LSD, it has nothing to do with LSD, and yet the imagery, if you just listen to the words of the song, not that they make any sense, mind you, but it's just like, the thing is, John Lennon's kid, Julian, he was very talented. He was like a miniature Chagall, that's right. I don't know that I know who this Chagall fellow is. In fact, I'm just an ordinary fellow. I just want my bangers and beer, and I'd be happy, and I'm wearing my trademark rings, even though it's been like, about 25 years since I was known as Ringo, and here I am wearing a very sophisticated looking vest and my white shirt, no tie of course. Here we are in black and white with the gatefold sleeve to the completed album, even though this is supposedly about the making of the album. Now, let me show you. I can play the piano. And it's a very simple composition, really, especially for somebody who's classically trained like me. And, you know, it sounds a bit classical, yes. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, the piano riff, it's not really very sophisticated, and yet it's ineffably lovely all the same. Yes, the man has very great compositional gifts, and it took a real genius, of course, like me, in order to fully produce this sort of thing. You know, it was almost like he was going through the alphabet and picking out letters at random to play on the piano, and yet I made it into a work of art. See, here's me and Paul, just to show that there's no lasting enmity between us, even though I've never had anything to do with anything that Paul has done for the last 25 years. This is the first time we've been together since 1970, to tell you the truth. You couldn't get me. Sorry about that. I'd like very much to have helped him out with some of his songs. You can see that Paul's output after the Beatles broke up was really dreary and terrible because I had nothing to do with it, of course. And that's basically what happened. This is very interesting. You know, on the Sgt. Pepper album, did I mention this before? This is really... I don't know. I'm not sure I can say anything more about Sgt. Pepper right now. Except, see, George isn't the only one that can fart around with the control board. Hey look, some more footage of hippies dancing. Wow, this must be the 60s, man. You can tell because not only are they dancing in a field full of cow shit, but they're dancing barefoot, completely ignorant of the risks. Hi, it's me again. As you can see, although I'm wearing a Mr. Rogers-like sweater and a white shirt, I too am anti-establishment and do not wear a tie. Of course, it would diminish my vocal range, my mumbling, muttering, and somewhat pausing delivery. If I were to, in fact, wear a tie, it would constrict my vocal cords, and I couldn't get those beefy baritone tones from my throat box. That, and you know, since we slept until about 5 in the afternoon, we basically wrote our songs in the afternoon, and, well, now, there's still something about Sgt. Pepper people don't understand. See, people thought that John wrote the lyrics and I wrote the songs, but actually, I wrote all the songs and the lyrics too, see? Well, here's the thing. John and Paul, they were great, and they thought they were kings of the world, and, well, it was really too bad. Yes, it really was really too bad, because I was actually the king of the world. I didn't need John Lennon. John Lennon was just excess baggage as far as I'm concerned. Oh, and by the way, that fellow that wrote that biography of me, Jeffrey Giuliano, he wrote this thing called Blackbird, and I don't know, some say it was a rather frank study of me. I think it's all lies. All lies, I say. I'm not a megalomaniac, and I will hunt down and kill anyone who says I am. Well, Paul wrote lots of songs. And the thing is, you know, get by with a little help from my friends, it was just 5 notes. How do you like that, huh? I mean, it's like he was just sitting at the piano, fiddling and diddling, and he came up with these 5 notes, and he wrote a whole song about them. And of course he figures, well, since it's only 5 notes, we'll give it to Ringo. Here I am in front of my incredibly primitive recording technology, once again showing that I, George Martin, was the mastermind behind much of Sgt. Pepper. Unlike popular opinion has it, of course, that the Beatles wrote the songs, but actually it was me that put everything together. And there's poor Ringo, hapless Ringo, and then there's Genius John, Genius is paying Lennon, and I didn't want people saying, would you stand up and throw tomatoes at me? No, that wouldn't have sounded right. It didn't really scan. Actually, Hunter Davies has a very interesting anecdote about the writing of that song, Get By With a Little Help from My Friends. John's wife tried to chip in with some lyrics, but John and Paul rather brutally shut her out because, of course, they were northern men and male chauvinists. Well, as you can see here, the Beatles are just a little off-key in their backing vocals there, but since Ringo is singing at that mournful hound dog baritone of his, it doesn't really matter, and nobody really notices because I was able to jazz it up with recording effects. You know, I was worried about my vocals because, quite frankly, they stank, you know, when it comes right down to it. And there's not an awful lot I can do, vocally anyway. In fact, I had no business. And in fact, the Beatles didn't need me because they were all drummers themselves. They all could play drums, and all they did was tell me what to do. Well, anyway, it sure is really nice being a producer. Look, there's me, and there's some other guy with Vaseline in his hair, and there's a picture of a hand. That must be, I forget his name now. And, well, anyway, as you can see, I made a bundle of money from being involved with the Beatles, and you know, after the Beatles, there weren't very many other challenges, so I decided to take up with a rock group which I figured would be as big as the Beatles, America. Well, once again, here I am. I'm growing a little bit pudgy. My eyes are so big and googly, you could probably pop them with a pin. Well, I've been aged very well. In fact, I look somewhat like someone's gardener or a character from Nobody's Fool, the Paul Newman movie set in upstate New York. Yes, I sort of look like a dreary sort of janitor or something. But of course, you know, well, George Harrison really ran things. It's not heresy for me to say this because there's nobody around to stop me. And of course, even the few royalties I got from the Beatles have made me incredibly wealthy. You know that I only collaborated on 2 songs and only wrote 1 song for the entire output of the Beatles, which, as I recall, numbers, let's see, how many official recorded songs did the Beatles have? 186. Well, anyway, 3 out of 186, that's about a little less than 2% of their entire recorded output. Well, what about me? I had all these great songs. Frank Sinatra said that Something was a great song. And I got to hang out with all these incredibly famous Indian musicians, and yet nobody gives me any credit for writing Something, which Frank Sinatra said was one of the greatest songs, the greatest love ballad of the 20th century. That's what he called it. You know, I could have put that on Sgt. Pepper, but I didn't. See, I was saving it because I figured I'd wait until the Beatles were just about to break up, and then I'd stick it on Abbey Road, and it would be the one really great song on Abbey Road, and everybody would say what a great genius George is, and I'd sell more copies of my 3-album set, All Things Must Pass. You know, I shouldn't have used up all my great songs on All Things Must Pass. I should have held some of them for Living in the Material World, because that album kind of bit the bag. I even had to write Within You Without You. You know, Not Guilty really belonged on Sgt. Pepper, but I had to come up with Within You Without You because the boys sabotaged my 103 takes and couldn't get it right. And that noise of them laughing at the end of Within You Without You, that's not the Beatles laughing. It's a good song, I tell you. It's a good song. Okay, so it drones on at an interminable length, but you do have to admit that it comes to a really great climax. And here's the thing. I had violins. Now, Eleanor Rigby had violins, but these were Indian violins. So this is really great because, it shows how cosmopolitan the Beatles were. And if it weren't for me, of course, they wouldn't be very cosmopolitan at all, would they? See, there's the thing. The store East, all those Indian novelty stores and Crate and Barrel and all that, if it weren't for George Harrison and me, George Martin, then we wouldn't even have any of those stores. In fact, nobody would know the first thing about anything. Indian music, Indian movies, Indian cuisine, forget it. There wouldn't be anything. That would be totally off the chart. Of course, we're Britain, and the British people, we colonized India, so really we were responsible for India in its modern day state. As a matter of fact, the Beatles invented India, or at least if the Beatles didn't invent India, they would have had to for this album, you see. This is what we're getting at. The Beatles basically did everything, all right? If it weren't for the Beatles, the 1960s would have been skipped altogether. We would have gone from the 1950s to the 1970s, which in some respects we did. The 60s were an enormous aberration. The Beatles created decade. And if it weren't for the Beatles, then we would have gone straight from, doo-wop music to sha-na-na. We would have gone straight from Ozzy and Harriet to Happy Days. But the 60s, see, if it weren't for the 60s, then we wouldn't have all those great shows like Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie and Hogan's Heroes and My Mother the Car and Dennis the Menace. Well, that's true. The Beatles did invent the 60s. I think it's fair to say that I personally was responsible for inventing the country of India, which, as you may know, has about 20% of the world's people now. And yet it didn't exist. Now, we got to give the Beach Boys a little bit of credit. I suppose they invented the early 60s, and we sort of took everything they did and made it much better. And so we fixed it up, in other words. And Brian Wilson, he was a great genius, even though he was tone deaf in one ear and deaf in the other. And his father was a mean man. And wow, this must be wait a minute. I have an idea. I'm thinking of something. If it looks like, Brian Wilson, he was great. We really should have brought him into the studio instead of George Harrison because he had all the really great ideas. In fact, I must admit, we stole just about everything we possibly could from Pet Sounds, like the animal noises at the end of Good Morning. Well, of course, that was the coda of Caroline No. And, yeah, that's right. Everything was mine. Why do I sing? Well, the Beach Boys, it's not fair to compare them with the Beatles because they had much more, they had superior recording equipment. Abbey Road was a dump, to tell you the truth. EMI Studios, they were cheapskates. What they were able to do with that incredibly sophisticated recording technology totally blew us out of the water, but you'll never know it. And now we have one of those really quaint British acts, all harmonicas. How do you like that? And then the bearded guy in the corner snapping his fingers. He's sort of window dressing. That's for the beatnik crowd. The Morton Fraser Harmonica Band. They were a big thing back then, and I would have loved to have had those playing on our album too, but, well, even though we're the Beatles and we're practically like God, we couldn't afford to do that. You see, the budget wouldn't permit it. We went way over budget on Sgt. Pepper, as you're probably well aware.
And the thing is with EMI, it smelled so bad in there that they couldn't tell we were blowing pot in the bathrooms and anywhere else we could. Well, now, we you know, just as much as we stole from the Beach Boys, we also took stuff from all this weird stuff on TV, and we wrote an entire song based around a circus poster, and I would like to say that I had something to do with the writing of The Benefit of Mr. Kite, but actually I didn't, not one word. And it was really great. He had this incredible circus poster here, and he just took the words and just sort of diddle around with them, just like I diddle around with their music, and it's just amazing what I was able to do, because I'm the great George Harrison, Martin, and I'm the great George Harrison, you're the great George Martin. Yeah, so, anyway, I really should do something about those eyebrows of mine. Don't they make me look rather sinister? And my hairdresser, maybe I have Ringo touch me up a little bit. I got split ends, and well, basically, John dressed up in a priest outfit. He looked like a Hispanic priest, and he wanted to basically write a circus song that was about the church, or the church song that was about the circus, or whatever. Well, I obliged him, as I always do, even though he was totally addled with drugs. And well, if he wanted to have a song in which was so circusy that you could smell the sawdust, well, it was my job to break up all the furniture in the EMI studios and give him what he wanted. My sole role, you know, even though I claimed that I wrote much of Sgt. Pepper, it was basically just to keep the boys happy. They liked the way I made meat pies, and so I would bring them those, and I'd brew their tea for them. We British are very serious about our tea, as you might be well aware. And, well, here I am at the console just to show you how important I was to the making of Sgt. Pepper. Just incredible, don't you think? Or don't you? Once again, I'm cutting out the music here. I'm just playing the vocals. And, you know, I had more to do with the writing of The Benefit of Mr. Kite than any of those folks. They wanted me to do some crazy stunt with, you know, getting all this organ music and chopping it together and putting it back together, throwing it up in the air, and putting it back together again, and well, I obliged them, but unfortunately when we threw it up in the air, it all came back pretty much the same way that we'd thrown it up in to begin with. Now, we had a hurdy-gurdy going, and Donovan wasn't very happy about that because, of course, it was he who wrote the hurdy-gurdy man. Now, if we had put out Sgt. Pepper in the order that the songs were recorded, the running order would have been Strawberry Fields, 164, Penny Lane, A Day in the Life, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, Good Morning, Fixing a Hole, Only a Northern Song, which was a Sgt. Pepper outtake, Ignore This Man, he's Phil Collins, he had nothing to do with anything, Being for the Benefit of Mr. Kite, Lovely Rita, Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, Getting Better, and Within You Without You, She's Leaving Home, With a Little Help from My Friends, and the reprise Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. That would have been the actual running order. Well, hi, I'm John Lennon, and I like to obsessively watch television virtually all the time. It was very important to me at that stage, even though, yes, it was very important to John to have the television. Well, it's odd, you know, Lennon watched so much television that he even had leakage from stupid British sitcoms and Meet the Wife, for example. It's Time for Tea and Meet the Wife. See, once again, there's the tea motif and the television. You know, I think actually Good Morning was probably the best song on the entire thing, and that's because it was, along with The Benefit of Mr. Kite, the one song that I had the most to do with. Now, what else can I say about Good Morning? Now, he had all these animals in there, and what we don't mention, of course, is that he got the idea from the Beach Boys, because that would be somewhat déclassé. He's not around to defend himself, after all.
I really can't seem to find any more data about good morning in here. And I know it's got to be in here somewhere. Maybe he wrote it a lot earlier than oh, here we go. Well, you know, John Lennon called good morning a throwaway piece of garbage. But actually, it was his answer song to Good Day Sunshine. Well, you know, I had a good deal to do with the clumsy guitars and I'm sorry, the clumsy drumming and those big smashing cymbals. You know, if I ever earned my money for this band, then it was on this track because really, I really had to sweat. Those congas, they're not easy to play, and those gigantic cymbal crashes, those are really great. And you know, only I could have come up with that rhythmically unruly backing track to Good Morning, Good Morning. I don't think they could have gotten anyone else. No, we probably couldn't have gotten anybody else. We had a lot of problems because we really lost the knack of writing singles. So what we did was, you know, we figured we'd put out an entire album which would sell like a single, and in that way we would increase the hegemony of the Beatles. As you can see, I'm here in my shiny blue suit, and Ringo's in his red suit, and George is in his orange suit. And there's all these people in the background, and what we're doing basically is equating our greatness with theirs. I mean, it's supposed to be a tribute, but that's just a sneaky way of saying we're just as great as Einstein. We're the Einsteins of rock and roll. Well, you know, some people said that the song Fixing a Hole was actually about heroin. You know, a hole in your arm and you put the needle in it and you fix it. Well, no, I don't think it had anything to do with heroin per se. And as for the cover of Sgt. Pepper, well, first we shot it in black and white, see, and Dylan Thomas managed to make it on there, even though I don't think the boys really went in much for lifted pinky type poetry and whatnot. Anyway, yes. Oh, I don't know. We just figured we'd throw something together at the last minute. And, oh, well, getting back to Fixing a Hole. Well, you know that song Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys. It's rather similar to Good Vibrations, and there's certain similarities to a song like our own Nowhere Man as well. Anyway, John ran the group for the longest time, and then when Paul had his chance to take over again, well, he certainly did. And in Sgt. Pepper, Paul had a lot to do with that. It was his idea, it was his execution, and you know, John had a lot to do with furthering communist aggression into China and weakening the will of the United States to resist. And of course, Hanoi gave them their Medal of Honor. Well, it's really too bad. Well, you know, I'm still incredibly touched by that I'm still incredibly touched by the song A Day in the Life. And you know, if it had been released when it was recorded, it would have been one of the very first songs on Sgt. Pepper. I think it was the biggest mistake we ever made not to just forget the rest of the album and just issue A Day in the Life as an extended play record. Now, those weren't really very popular in Great Britain, in the United States, and we would have lost our American market, but all the British people would have been saying how great we were. And, well, here I am, boring old Phil Collins again. You know, I really should get a toupee or something. You'd think a guy with my money would be able to afford those implants that you could put in your head, make me look less like an old geezer and more like a rock star. Oh well. And there's hapless Ringo again. Yes, I was rather hapless. I didn't have an awful lot to do during the recording of A Day in the Life. You know, people say I'm the anti-intellectual member of the group, but actually I believe that A Day in the Life was a song not of disillusionment with life itself, but of disenchantment with the limits of mundane perception. I believe that A Day in the Life depicted the real world as an unenlightened construct that reduced, depressed, and ultimately destroyed. Well, John basically wrote the first part of A Day in the Life and the last part, and Paul sort of supplied the sandwich, but it took me to put it all together. And to tell you the truth, that song should be credited to Lennon, McCartney, and George Martin, but of course it isn't. Now, some people say, George Martin, how can you claim to have written so much of the Beatles' material for them when your own contributions, which ended up on side B of Yellow Submarine, were so palpably mediocre? Now, all I have to say to that is, well, well, we didn't know quite how we were going to be able to put all these different things together. So we just sort of fiddled and diddled around with it for a long time. And, you know, we just sort of slapped things together. Random, the boys called it. Just throw stuff up in the air and see where it lands and put it together, because and they called it random. And the boys were so convinced that everything they did had the Midas touch that they figured that they'd be able to put it together later, of course, with my help. Now, you don't know how trying it is to have a band which, instead of going into the studio with finished product, elected instead to simply write the songs in the studio, ate up all that studio time, which we could have used to better effect with other artists who were patiently waiting their turn. But, well, what can you do? And now here we have the incredible crescendo to Sgt. Pepper, the Day in the Life crescendo. Yes, I'm still very pleased with my work on that particular song, as you can see. Well, you know, Sgt. Pepper, basically it was an album which, by dint of their saying it was a concept album, became a concept album. Although nobody's ever really said to my satisfaction exactly what a concept album really constitutes, unless it's an album written around one idea, which sort of like getting an album for the price of a single, or a single type concept spread out over an entire album. Well, you know, I think it's time for me to go up and sweep up the hedgerows in the back of my house here, because I like people thinking that I'm simply nothing more than a gardener on the Harrison estate. Oh, the burdens of stardom, they're so great. I wish I wasn't famous. I really wish. And you can tell by the casual way in which I sit. Well, you know, I must say, celebrityhood, I wouldn't mind a little bit of celebrity here myself. I mean, people know that I'm George Martin, right? But when they see me on the street, they don't necessarily say, look, there's George Martin. He was the fifth Beatle. Now, you know, I'd fancy a little bit of that, actually. I really wouldn't mind people saying, look, there's the great George Martin who wrote all the Beatles songs. Oh, George Martin's full of crap. He didn't write anything. Well, he thinks he did. Well, you know, he's just a big slag. He just sat around the house, did nothing. Basically, oh, you know, oh, I'm George Martin. So that's all he does. He just goes, oh, he gets the side of his head. Says, I'm George Martin. Well, anyway, this was an awfully fun time we had here, deconstructing Sgt. Pepper in the Unmaking of Sgt. Pepper. I'm afraid that even though we did use original footage from somebody else's creative work, well, we're going to still say that it was our product because we did all the voiceovers and stuff. So we have to, like, roll these credits for the actual pictorial content of it. Just so we don't get into trouble with the Disney people. Now, when they find out about this, they're going to be really angry and upset. So, please, whatever you do, don't tell them. And
join you momentarily in my full regalia so that we might discuss the consequences. Well, hi, I'm the wrong hero. I'm back, at least momentarily. Now, I'm warning you, if the Disney people and the Beatles find out about this, they'll have my head, especially the latter portion of this broadcast. I'd like to show you some of the books that were used in the making of the Unmaking of Sgt. Pepper, as well as other portions of our programming. A Day in the Life, the Music and Artistry of the Beatles by Mark Hertzgaard. Revolution in the Head, the Beatles recordings in the 60s by Ian MacDonald. The Lost Beatles Interviews by Jeffrey Giuliano. Rare Records, Wax Trash and Vinyl Treasures by Tom Hibbert. The Acid Trip, A Complete Guide to Psychedelic Music. Now this one's written by Vernon Joinson. Rock and Roll Confidential Report by Dave Marsh and the editors of Rock and Roll Confidential. Rock and Roll Babylon. This is actually kind of a trashy book. It's by Gary Herman, but nevertheless, it was of some use. Early Rockers by Howard Elson. Let's see. The British Invasion by Nicholas Schaffner. San Francisco Nights, The Psychedelic Music Trip, 1965 to 1968 by Gene Sculati and David C.A. That's a pretty psychedelic name right there. And of course, the Beatles recording sessions, the official Abbey Road Studios session notes by Mark Lewisone. This is the book, really. That and Revolution in the Head. In addition, I've drawn upon sources such as the girl group book by Alan Betrock, The Story of Motown by Peter Benjaminson, Dick Clark's The First 25 Years of Rock and Roll, the 1988 The New Wave Punk Rock Explosion by Caroline Kuhn, The New Rock and Roll by Stuart Cope and Glenn A. Baker, the Rolling Stone Encyclopedia of Rock and Roll, the New Rolling Stone Record Guide, the first edition of the Rolling Stone Record Guide, the Rolling Stone History of Rock and Roll, the Ballad of John and Yoko by the editors of Rolling Stone, the Kinks Chronicles by, what is that guy's name? John Mendelsohn, The Devil's Music, which is a story of the blues, Mystery Train by Grill Marcus, You're So Cold, I'm Turning Blue, which is a book about country and western by Martha Hume, The Music of Black Americans by Eileen Southern, and let's see, I've gotten a lot of I've had a lot of fun reading Rock Bottom by Muck Raker, and Rock and Roll Confidential by Penny Stallings, and of course Chuck Eddy's Stairway to Hell, which is of course about heavy metal music. Anyway, I'm the wrong hero, and this has been a great deal of fun, and I certainly hope you enjoyed this presentation. This is a very special program for the for Cambridge Community Television, and for myself, Francis DiMenno. This is the 250th consecutive week, excluding holidays, that we have broadcast Noise Party. So this is in fact the 250th program, and just to give you some idea of what a milestone this is, personally anyway, Andy of Mayberry only had 249 episodes, and so this makes it probably, I couldn't say for sure, but quite probably the longest running continuous programming on Cambridge Community Television. And of course, with our companion show, Cafe Cabaret, broadcast every Tuesday night, also approaching its 250th. We have broadcast very close to a total of 500 two-hour weekly programs here on Cambridge Community Television. So I'd like to thank you very much for tuning in to Noise Party, and in the month of January we'll be showing broadcast footage from the Cafe Liberty. So we hope you'll all tune in.